Hello and welcome to another episode of Just Onside. I'm your host for today, Wes, and I'll be joined as always by Ayub. Ayub, how you doing, mate? You good?
Not good. Not good. It's been a rough weekend. Uh,
Fair off.
and that's football related. In terms of everything else, it's been absolutely fine. The weather's been gorgeous, but there's a dark cloud hanging over this house in Blackburn at the moment.
I guess you're referring obviously to the game at Wembley yesterday, and not just the game at Wembley, Ayub,
Mm.
some of the other results over the weekend as well that perhaps left that cloud, as you mentioned, hovering over Leeds United Football Club potentially. Let's kick it right off, Ayub. Wembley yesterday, beautiful day. A wonderful setting for a semi-final. City had already booked their spot the day before at home to Southampton. Tough game, actually. Could have gone
Mm.
sideways for them. Southampton acquitted themselves very well and even took a shock lead. But City, as imperious as they are, booked their final spot. And then it was left up to Leeds and Chelsea to contest the second final. A fairly watchable game, although Leeds perhaps huffed and puffed. But anyway, incredible opportunity for Leeds to get to the final. It wasn't meant to be, against Chelsea under new management for the game. First and foremost, tell us a little bit about your emotions about the game, because we've spoken previously about how you pretty much prioritize league survival first and foremost above anything else. But how did you view this game as an opportunity, given your position in the league? And what did you make of the game as well? Take it away.
Yeah, I mean the results before. I mean, in terms of sort of how I felt for the game, I was really looking forward to it. But Friday and Saturday, the results for Forest, West Ham, Spurs, that really put a dampener on the game for Sunday because I was really looking forward to it, but that just had me panicking. I mean, Forest were absolutely, I mean, you used the word imperious. Forest were imperious against Sunderland. A real shock because I wasn't expecting that sort of thumping. And the results on
Mm-hmm.
Saturday, they were hammer blows, absolute hammer blows. I expected Spurs to win, but when
Yeah.
it's 80 minutes and it's still 0-0, I think it was 80 minutes and still 0-0, you think there's a little bit of hope that you might just get a draw, but wasn't to be. And the West Ham, I mean, that was a gut punch. That I still haven't recovered from that. So that's the backdrop to the Leeds game. So that put a dampener on the Sunday sort of semi-final. But I suppose once it got to kick-off time, I was looking forward to it. But
Mm.
very, very frustrating, very disappointed. Really, we just didn't turn up in that first half. We didn't turn up, and it the golfing class was just sort of monstrous. Obviously, the Rossignol factor had an impact. It must have had an impact because prior to that, they certainly weren't playing sort of when the game started. They were pressing, they were energetic. The middle of the park completely controlled by Chelsea. I mean, they've got some really, really quality players. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I think Chelsea fans were probably frustrated with the performances because they've got such an array of talent. But we just were. I mean, it looked like a League One outfit in that first half against a Premier League outfit. But in saying that, we did what we sort of do so often. Missed a glorious opportunity, Aronson this time. Lovely little move. I mean, it was a
Oh, yeah.
great, yeah, great ball by DCL. You've got to score. You've got to score. I mean, you can give credit to Sanchez, but you've got to score. But I knew that Aronson isn't somebody who's clinical. I mean, he sort of runs around. He's a little whippet. He huffs and puffs, but he's got no quality, as have sort of many of the Leeds players. And that first half demonstrated it. We were just we were second best, and that goal that uh, Chelsea scored. It's inexcusable. It's inexcusable. I mean, you've got a guy who's 6'3". He's powerfully built, and he was bullied off the ball,
Mm.
and the rest it just that's Chelsea for you. Didn't get that many opportunities, but when they did have an opportunity, they made it count. And thereafter, it was the dark arts were out. The dark arts were out. I mean, I have no issue with that. I have no issue with that. I mean, and we'll obviously, I've no doubt we're going to pick up on that.
Yeah.
Uh, and I was hugely frustrated. It really was. I mean, it was. I mean, I was sort of hoarse by the end of the game because I just was furious with what was happening. But in the cold light of day, I have no issue with that. So it was a really, really disappointing. Second half, yes. I mean, Bart made some changes. We got Anton Stark back, who probably is head and shoulders the classiest player that we have. Okafor is good, but he's not as consistent. Even though last sort of few weeks he's been very, very good. But when Stack came on, it sort of changed the dynamic of
Yeah,
the game. Uh, I mean, fantastic save from Sanchez. I think 47, 48 minutes. He strikes it beautifully. That goes
yeah,
in, changes the game, but it just wasn't meant to be. So we were better in the second half, but I think Chelsea were just sort of saying, "Well, okay, you bring it on," and they probably thought we just don't have the class and the quality to break them down, and it turned out to be the case. We had a couple of opportunities, one to DCL, but he does a damning stat on DCL is that he's not scored from open play in the last 18 games, and that where sort of was clearly demonstrated by sort of his lack of sort of clinical ability. So hugely frustrating, hugely disappointing. It probably is one of the roughest weekends I've had uh, in quite a while because of the other results. Because it just would have made it more palatable this semi-final defeat if one of the other games had turned out to be a draw or
yeah.
maybe one of the teams got beat. But because of the fact that all three won, it just puts huge pressure on us now for Friday. But in terms of this game, very, very disappointed. And there was something that Fark said post match, which if I was there, I would have knocked his head off. I mean, he was talking about the players were overawed. The occasion was a little bit too much in the first half. I mean, this is a Premier League side. Southampton, I watched the game Southampton played the day before. They weren't overawed, and they're a
Yeah.
Championship side. Uh, Falk's got one job to make sure that his players are up for it. It's not as if Chelsea are on alien sort of foe. We've played them twice this season already, and we've beaten them once. We've got a draw at the bridge, so
Yeah.
we shouldn't have been overawed. This is where the manager sort of makes sure that you look forward to a Wembley semi-final. You don't sort of cower and you don't go into your shell. That first half was awful, and I pin it down on Falk. So Bart's responsible for that fiasco in that first half. Made a couple of changes, but it was all too late. So very, very bad weekend. Very bad weekend. This Friday now has become absolutely monumental. I mean, uh, I'm a bag of nerves.
You are a bag of nerves. And it's funny, actually, because when I asked you about the game itself, you spoke for the first 2 minutes about the results of your rivals in the Premier League and how that set the kind of weekend off on a negative note. It perhaps tells you the emotions of many a Leeds fan, I guess. And I can sympathize a little bit in terms of the understanding of, well, none of them dropped points. If just one of them had dropped points somewhere, you wouldn't have this kind of illusion as though you're kind of falling
Mm,
behind, which you haven't really, because it's ultimately still in your own hands, very much so in the league, and you're still in a very much advantageous position in the league. On the game itself, Ayub, I saw it like you did, although I think I would argue you're still being a little harsh on Leeds. I mean, look, you're right. In the first half, they were definitely second best, and the game could have been put beyond you if Chelsea had really been,
mm,
you had the chance with João Pedro that came off the post. You actually started the game very well, didn't you? You from the very
mm,
first attack, where you got a free kick, which took an age actually to take, which was a bit of an issue, I thought, from my side. But then Tanaka, I think, blazes it over. This would have really set you off
mm,
on the right. No, but you're right. There afterwards, I mean, it's a really horrible goal to concede. You're absolutely right. Route one, you don't win it, and it's like two passes, and there's a cross 3-on-3 with Fernandez free. It just shouldn't happen,
mm,
not at this level, especially from Route one. If they cut you open, fair enough. But it wasn't a very kind of intricate move or anything like that,
mm,
really. It was very straightforward, and that'll be very disappointing for Leeds. But second half, you started really well, and I thought you gave a really good account of yourselves in the second half. Yes, first half, you mentioned about that wonderful chance, a lovely third man run from Aronson. But other than that, you didn't have much to kind of lean on. But second half, Stack's introduction, I mean, that was a wonderful shot. Sanchez makes a good save because you can see he sees it a little bit late
mm,
by putting his kind of arm out there. Still a very, very good save, great strike. And just there afterwards, you're right, you huffed and puffed. I thought you were very much in the ascendancy. You spoke about the dark arts. There's been a bit of discussion about
mm,
that kind of stoppage, which will be a thing of the past next season because they will start to punish that. I think that's already been drawn up in terms of the punishment for potentially somebody have to go off for a minute if that is the case. But you're right. For now, the rules are what the rules are. So I think it's just one of those that we're just going to have to wait. But I thought you've huffed and puffed very well. Try to get back in the game. You're right. Devoid of quality, so to speak.
Mm,
Great opportunity for DCL. One of the big issues that he has is, I mean, you mentioned the word clinical, but he doesn't have the ability to pick a corner with any real conviction.
mm,
You'll see a lot of his finishes famously at Old Trafford, if you remember, a couple of occasions where it's just straight at the keeper, where
mm.
anything either side.
Yeah.
Similar this time. It's as though he's trying to make too sure of getting it on target, if that makes sense, as opposed to having serious confidence that he can find a corner, let's say. But look, Leeds don't have a good record at Wembley. You've lost your last 4 games there, I think, without scoring a goal. So it's not a happy ground for you. But ultimately, you're right. The better team did win. I thought you did have some opportunities, which if you took, could have really changed the momentum of that game. Because Leeds are I mean, I think they're an honest team. They
Mm.
gave as good as they got. You saw, I mean, your left back, he could have run at the end. He was absolute. I mean, I don't know if it was
He's done his
cramp or
hamstrings. He's done his
he
yeah,
could
yeah.
not run. I mean, I felt for him
Mm,
because he genuinely was trying. I mean, he had the ball at his feet once, and he had to kick it forward. And you could tell he was in no
mm.
fit state to even kick a football. But look, I think the better team won. Chelsea, albeit they've had a difficult season, they're still a better team than Leeds United
Yeah.
Football Club at this stage. And you're right, just looking at some of the other results, that will perhaps, let's see, that may well be crucial in the grand scheme of things. Just on those teams, if we just segue to the relegation battle a little bit. Um, I mean, I can see you're quite despondent because of the way the results have fallen. Huge wins for Spurs. You saw the elation with Palhinha's goal. Obviously, bad news with Simmons.
Mm,
Unfortunately, I mean, it looked bad when he did it. I
mm,
couldn't believe he tried to go on it again. He's done his ACL. Unfortunately for him, he's going to miss the World Cup, which is incredibly sad
mm.
for footballers at this stage of the season, where any half decent injury is going to mean you're going to miss the
Yeah.
World Cup if your team's got there. So that's incredibly sad. But look, Forest did the business. West Ham, obviously, Callum Wilson producing another late winner, and then obviously Spurs. Where do you think you stand, are you? Because I know that is the bread and butter that you're focused on this season. Do you see it as though this could be a very pivotal weekend, or do you still see it from a glass half full to say, look, Friday, I believe you're at Ellen Road, Europe. It's a home game. It's a chance to get a 3 points that really does pretty much assure you of safety from my perspective. So how do you see it? Is it all down to Friday?
It probably is now. It probably is because it's from the 4 remaining games that we have, it's the most winnable game, and it's the one game that we do expect to get 3 points. So it's absolutely imperative that obviously we do get the 3 points. Uh, I mean, I'm not sure. I don't think there'll be a hangover from the FA Cup, certainly not. But I think the results for Spurs, the results for West Ham, and Forest. Forest are just, I mean, it seems a bizarre thing to say. They're a point below us, same number of games, but they're probably as confident as anybody in that bottom four that they'll escape because they're playing some superb stuff. They've got Chris Wood back as well. I mean, I wasn't going to say he's their talisman, but certainly to add Chris Wood to what they've already got just makes it impossible. And that sort of 5-0 demolition
Yeah.
of a decent, tidy Sunderland side uh, away from home, it speaks volumes for how powerful sort of Forest are right at this moment in time. And there's a reason why they've progressed as well in the conference. Is it the conference or the Europa Cup?
Europa League,
One of the
Europa
two
League, Europa
sort
League.
of. Oh, Europa League, yeah. Well, it's meaningless anyway. Well, it
Well,
is a real issue, isn't it?
you
Yeah.
say it's
Mm,
meaningless, are you? Just very quickly, and I do want you to continue in terms of Spurs and West Ham. You say it's meaningless, are you? But this could have big ramifications on both sides of the table. You've got Villa against Forest in the Europa League semi-finals. Big implications either way. That Europa League final, you is played a couple of days before the final game of the season. Now, you can imagine Villa last game of the season going to the Etihad. off the back of whatever happens potentially if they get to the final. You could think about rotation. They might well be securing
Mm,
fifth. So you can have a think about perhaps from maybe an Arsenal perspective, what they would like from a Villa team in terms of should they get to the final. Is that good news? What
mm.
happens if they lose that final? A hangover if they already secured fifth? And similar vice versa for Forest. We spoke about this with Leeds. Is it good if they get to the final? I think FA Cup finals are always good to get to and try and get your hands on the trophy. But Forest also, if they manage to sneak through, that's another a game obviously extra that they've got to think about. Trying to get their hands on the trophy. Forest have a good history, obviously a rich history in terms of European trophies and what have you, and what that could mean in terms of heading into the final game. Now you might be of the opinion that Forest will be long clear by then, but you get the point. It could have some impact actually
Mm.
about which team gets through to this Europa League final. But sorry, you're continuing about West Ham and Spurs.
Yeah, I mean, you make a really valid point. I don't think it's going to have an impact. Certainly, it's not going to have an impact on Forest. Villa might be a different story. They might just sort of perhaps because for them, I suppose it depends on sort of exactly what position they're in, but they probably focus more on the cup. Whereas Forest, I think they've navigated this season fantastically well towards the latter part. I think at the start, maybe, but that was more a managerial issues. I think the turnaround, the turnover of managers, I think that was something which was not healthy for Nottingham Forest. I think they've got an excellent coach now, and this is the Forest really. I mean, what people expected at the start of the season. They've got quality players. They've got a good coach, and I see them sort of having no impact on their league form, because I think they've done sort of reasonably well, sort of because they've got a big enough squad. Not an issue at all. The Forest, I mean the Spurs, I mean that hurt. That hurt because I was expecting Everton. I mean, I did expect that with West Ham being home, obviously the advantages with them. But 1-1 going into 90 minutes, I'm sort of thinking, yeah, yeah. And Everton are a decent side. They're not sort of pushovers. So certainly when they pulled it back to 1-1, I expected uh, Everton to hold out. But there were some controversial decisions in there. I mean, I think if you look at the game, if you look at the highlights from a Leeds perspective, I'm furious because I think there should have been a penalty that was given to Everton, which was not given. So there was a lot of bad fortune,
Yeah,
and it just was a really, really bad weekend because I couldn't have scripted it sort of worse than what happened, what transpired. Uh, that's where I'm just sort of thinking. I'm hoping that there's no sort of repercussions of that, where players just feel a little bit jittery, sort of
yeah,
thinking, "Hang on, it's just got a little bit too close." Also when Falk sort of said that the players were overawed about Wembley, uh, this game is huge. The magnitude of it is huge. So if the players have already expressed, or
yeah,
if the players have already sort of exhibited some sort of nerves when the stakes are so high, I'm hoping it's not the same thing on Friday. I've just got this fear that Burnley they're down, but they're probably almost thinking, right, who do we not want in the Championship next season? Uh, Probably West Ham, probably Spurs, definitely. Who we don't mind in the Championship, Leeds. So they probably might just say, well, hang on, let's treat this as our cup final. We don't care about sort of losing the next three, but this is a game that we want to make sure that we get the points because then it means that Leeds are
yeah.
right in the mix. So it's Leeds fans at the moment. We're in a sort of mini meltdown at this moment in time because I think we that's just the way that we are. I think the years and years of sort of always been sort of I won't say unlucky. We've just not sort of
Mm,
been good enough a lot of times. This just sort of opens up a lot of fears. But it's in our hands. It's in our hands.
yeah.
I mean, if we go down, there will be nobody else to blame apart from ourselves. Uh, so I'm as I said, I'm so nervous for this Friday.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, look, listen, this is Spurs' first win in 2026. So they were 2-1. We're at the end of April, Ayub. So they've got to win a game or two.
Mm.
And you're right in terms of the others. West Ham have really kind of stuck together. I mean, you're right in terms of some of the incidents in that game. I mean, that easily could have been given as a penalty. I mean, the handball is it's pretty straightforward. It's an unusual
Yeah,
incident, don't get me wrong, in terms of coming around the side, so to speak, of a player protecting the ball. But it's pretty clear, isn't it, in terms
yeah,
of how it happens? His hands probably shouldn't be in the cookie jar, so to speak. Um, as they were. But last minute, I mean, it's crucial. And you remember Callum Wilson scored a huge goal against Spurs in the
Mm.
last minute of the game. I think it was away to Spurs at the time from a set piece, you'll remember. So right place, right time. But West Ham were coming together for it, you're right. I mean, the game was done, wasn't it, in half an hour?
Yeah, yeah.
So from a Forest fans perspective, when you said they led by a good manager, I mean the jury's out. He's technically relegated Wolves, but anyway, we'll just brush over that. But you're right. Listen, he's got something about him. It's a new
Mm.
set of circumstances, difficult circumstances at Forest with the ownership group and all the rest of it. But that's a wonderful win. Big players. I mean, you've spoken about this before. You've hit the nail on the head about Gibbs White, Anderson, big players, big moments.
Yeah.
Gibbs White really potentially writing himself into that England squad. There's a lot of talk
Yeah.
because he's really finishing the season very strong. Both those players will be on the move in the summer, no doubt. But yeah, Spurs was the one you sense, even from a fan's perspective for Spurs, they felt if they did not beat Wolves, they were down, and I think they were. I think they were
Mm.
down if they didn't beat Wolves. So yeah, look, listen, incredibly a tough weekend for Leeds, but to your point, you it's still in your hands, and whilst it's still in your
Mm.
hands, you've still got to feel relatively confident. What do you think? You still fancy yourselves to make it?
I really don't know, and this is genuinely. I mean, it's not just sort of this sort of negativity that I have as a Leeds fan. It's just it's so hard to call. I still look at when I look at the fixtures because it's something that I keep on doing. I sort of think that it's almost impossible for Spurs and West Ham to get maximum points. I mean, one of the games West Ham play is against Arsenal, so it's highly improbable that they're going to get maximum points. So I sort of doing the calculations. I'm sort of thinking 4 points should be more than enough, but it's whether the mentality is there because the quality isn't there. We're not a good team. I think that first half ably demonstrated how poor we are. I mean, again, just reflecting back on the game, it was chalk and cheese. I mean, it's we were hurried. We always needed that extra touch, and it just seemed that players were missing. Nobody was showing, and it we just I don't know because I don't think there's much difference in terms of quality between Burnley and Leeds. I think we've shown a great aptitude and a great attitude, but this is really when it counts. So really, certainly in terms of two teams playing on Friday, there's not much difference between the abilities. So I'm just hoping that the mindset is right, the attitude is right. We play as we did in the second half. But again, that was because I think Chelsea let us play because I think their intention was
Yeah.
right. We've got the goal. I just don't think this team is good enough to score against us. So they to a certain extent allowed us to play. It's such a massive game that I just hope that Fark is able to try and convince these players to have the belief. He
Yeah.
has done it a few times this season, but it's as important a game as we'll play all season. This one. So I hope we're up for it. But I'm a nervous wreck. Really, I'm so nervous.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, in some ways, though, the way I see it is, it's one game, it's one opportunity to solidify Premier League status next season. That's why I see it. The same way I think from an Arsenal perspective, they went to the Etihad knowing a win would give them a Premier League title most likely. So I think it is important to see it as an opportunity, and also it's at home against a relegated team. So to your point, they'll probably play with a bit of freedom. Burnley will,
Hmm.
but I don't think that harms Leeds because Burnley are pretty goal shy at the best of times, and I think Leeds, if they can play a slightly more open style, which they do, Leeds tend to play. Let's be very
Hmm.
clear. I think there should be some serious openings. So I think it's in their hands. I think it's one game for Premier League survival, and I think you would hope that the players are not too weighed down, I guess, by that opportunity. Just before we or you let me indulge in a little bit of Arsenal talk. You another slight subplot from that game yesterday at Wembley was obviously Chelsea. Callum McFarlane steering Chelsea to an FA Cup final. He's had two games for Chelsea this season. Once after Maresca was let go, and now after Rosinia's let go. One was against City, huge game at the Etihad. Another one was another huge game, FA Cup semi-final, and he'll get a chance to get his hands on a trophy during the FA Cup final. Just very quickly, your son obviously supports Chelsea. Just want to get your thoughts. Liam Rossignol, predictable. Let's be very clear.
Mm.
From the moment he was appointed, I guess nothing surprises you with Chelsea. But what's your thoughts? What's your son's thoughts in terms of Rossignol being let go and ultimately another a debacle of an episode, I guess, for Chelsea Football Club? How do you see it?
I'm not really sort of spoken too much about the Rossignol uh, sort of sacking, but certainly from watching them yesterday, it was clear that they wanted him sacked. They wanted him to go. That was clearly sort of obvious that they weren't trying. I mean, you can sort of question the morality of the players, but it is what it is. I mean, that was ably sort of demonstrated by their attitudes yesterday. Because I mean that certainly looked like a completely different Chelsea side to the last few weeks, especially against Brighton. I mean, that was probably one of the worst performances they've put in. Rossini, I just don't think he. I mean, he's got experience, but managing Premier League, managing egos is a little bit different. I think he was out of his depth. So I think it's. I don't think this is a testimony to McFarlane. It was just the fact that Rossini's gone. These players would have played sort of Mickey Mouse could have been managing them on Sunday, and they would have played well because these are good players. But I just want to before we start before I let you indulge
Mm.
about the Arsenal, I just want to pick on the I've talked about the dark arts.
Yeah.
And it really is infuriating. I mean, I think we've had obviously conversations before about how do we do that, and we have, and certainly it's something that you I think
Mm.
spoke about in time how long
Yeah.
sort of if when we have and it's about 55 minutes I think on average, isn't it? I think it's time where maybe the Football League seriously thought about sort of having that as a so every time there is a stop in play, the clock stops. Then you can roll around for 10 minutes. I mean, when I watched that game, I mean, it was infuriating because it's the slightest contact because they 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 were managing the game because it was clear that what they were doing. So how do you try and sort of put people off from doing that? So what is your thought? I mean, are you an advocate that if we introduce maybe 55-minute sort of matches, but that clock stops when there's a sort of break in play, it will take away from players sort of feigning injury and doing all of these ridiculous sort of nonsensical histrionics when somebody just glances them.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think there's two issues here. You, thanks. It's an interesting question. I think there's two issues here. Firstly, in terms of an in-play clock, the single biggest reason that I've been a big proponent of that for the longest time is because for two main reasons. One, tickets cost a pretty penny. So I think ultimately this is an entertainment sport, and you have to give the fans their fair share of in-play action. That's the first thing, and that's not just consumers in the pitch, but also obviously watching worldwide, because ultimately these TV deals that you go for a gazillion dollars, ultimately to
Mm,
keep up to speed with the ever increasing cost of players and all the other bits of it in terms of the revenue that football generates. So I just think from an entertainment perspective, the moment you introduce in-play clock, which stops every time the ball's out of play, you're guaranteed a minimum amount of action. So if a player wants to roll around and feign injury, so be it. He can roll around for 20 minutes if he wants. It's not going to make a
mm,
blind bit of difference. So I think that from a fairness perspective, because even now, Ayub, when you think about it, there's games where teams will still know that they can maybe get away with it with the referee,
mm,
whether they kind of roll around a little bit. Some referees are a bit more tough when it comes to adding extra time. Some perhaps not so much. I watched a game recently where there were two substitutions. I think either two substitutions or a goal that happened in injury time. Yet the referee still didn't add any time. And every time there's a
mm,
goal, the play stops for a minute and a half because there's
mm.
celebrations ongoing. So I think it's important when a ball's dead for the clock to stop, which means we
Yeah.
all know, listen, we're going to play whether it's 55 minutes, 56 minutes, 57 minutes. So I
Mm,
think that's the first thing. The issue yesterday is a different one, though, isn't it? Because what happened yesterday was the fact that Leeds had the momentum in the game. They were really kind of getting ahead of steam, so to speak. And Chelsea clearly used Sanchez as a way to gain a timeout, so to speak. Now, there's
mm,
multiple ways to go about this. You could perhaps give teams, let's say, one timeout game potentially. That could be an option we could look at. So both teams get a chance to use one at different times, which means technically the moment you give a timeout to one team, you could maybe either automatically give it to the other team because
Mm.
technically play stops, or you could avoid that, have the other opponents wait on the pitch whilst that's all happening. If you remember, Leeds felt quite offended, obviously, although it was slightly misconstrued about the Ramadan, the fasting, where they felt
Mm.
that Pep
Yeah.
Guardiola was using it as a way to give further instructions. But yes, there was a clear tool used within the rules, let's be very clear, to allow Chelsea just to take a moment and to kind of kill that head of steam that Leeds were building. Now, that's a
Mm.
very difficult one to police, are you? Because if you argue that, well, Sanchez is just feigned injury yesterday, and by all intents and purposes, he has, and they're not the first team, so I don't want to be, this is not a
Mm.
Chelsea thing. Arsenal have done it before as well, so let me be very open about that. Um, but that's a very difficult thing to police. You saw the game the day before. I watched the game Liverpool against Palace where Woodman goes on the floor. His foot clearly gets stuck. His knee gets stuck in the turf. He is hurt. I mean, that's pretty clear because when you see it, his knee
Mm.
does jar into the ground. Munoz doesn't know. Keeper's kind of on the floor. Liverpool probably should have done a bit better to get back on the line, and he scores into an empty
Mm.
net. So now the goal was given, and Woodman actually continued. I think he was hurt, by the way, but he did continue. Glasner spoke about
Mm.
how if he had gone off with a serious injury, I would have considered giving Liverpool a goal. I mean, how true that is, I guess only Oliver
Yeah.
Glasner will know. But that's the difficulty, isn't it? You when is a player feigning injury? When is a player not feigning injury? I think they are looking to resolve this particular loophole by suggesting, I think, next season that somebody's going to have to go off. So if a goalkeeper receives treatment, because normally the case is that a goalkeeper can't go off, otherwise you have an unguarded goal for half a minute. I think next season somebody's going to have to go off for a minute or something along those lines, I think, by all intents and purposes.
Mm.
I just think teams will always take advantage of loopholes and rules because ultimately they're all about gaining an advantage. They're all about we play to the referee's whistle. I just think the authorities have to be sharper, quicker, and much more proactive in dealing with situations before they arise. It took them for the longest time, Ayub, to deal with this 6 second, 7 second rule. And there's been a few corners given here or there this
Mm.
season, haven't there, where goalkeepers have held on. Goalkeepers are trying to get the ball back in play quicker. You see the referees counting them down sometimes. But I think with this particular instance, it's very rare that a goalkeeper gets injured. I think sometimes it can be a muscular injury that might not be as a result of a collision. But the way I see it is when one or too many clubs are taking advantage of that, I think they all have to suffer to some extent, and you
Mm.
have to take an offensive player off for a minute or a half a minute or something. There has to be some detriment. Otherwise, keepers will do this all the time because ultimately use it to their advantage. It's a tricky one, this particular one. You would hope, I mean, this is naive of me, but you would hope that teams wouldn't resort to these dark arts, but there's millions and millions of pounds at stake and glory and all the rest of it. So there will be this type of skullduggery ongoing. So yeah, I'd say it's two different issues, Ayub. How would you tackle with the issue yesterday? Because again, it's a difficult one, isn't it? It was done to stem the momentum that
Mm.
Leeds had by feigning injury. How would you deal with that particular incident? Because it's, again, difficult to gauge whether he's feigning injury or not.
Yeah, I mean you're right because it was. I mean, we did have a certain amount of momentum, and my question again is, it's a two-pronged thing. We had some momentum, so that obviously sort of stifles or stunts that momentum, but also it kills a bit of time because at the end I could not believe there was only when I say only 8 minutes, I we've had games this season where it's it's been double digits in terms of the added
11.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I could not believe, and that's another reason
Yeah.
why for me it's yeah okay. I still maintain that if there is an in play clock and that stops, I think there will still be a reluctance for Sanchez to do what he
Yes.
did because ultimately it was two pronged. Yes, let's interrupt the flow of Leeds, but also kill some time because if
Correct.
that latter is removed, they won't do that. So I really am an advocate now of in play time, in play clock, because it would get away from sort of teams exploiting currently loopholes, as you say, that allows them to do what they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And listen, in-play clocks, I think they should have been introduced a while ago, simply from the perspective of the cost of watching a football game. I mean, you think about a game. I mean, I know one of my good friends who went to watch the Arsenal Newcastle game, and he booked it pretty late, but he paid a pretty penny. And ultimately, you're paying for a certain amount of action. Now, one would argue watching the Arsenal game, I was praying for the full time whistle to be blown to be blown straight after Eze
Mm,
scored. To be fair, but
mm,
you get the point. Ultimately, it's
mm.
about entertainment. Football is a very different, sport is a different universe to any other industry. It's big business, yes, but it's entertainment. And I think ultimately teams, Arsenal included, are taking their sweet time with set pieces, with throw-ins for all types of different reasons. And I think putting a minimum clock ultimately should alleviate some of these issues. Don't forget, there's been many an incidents recently, rightly so, where there's an emergency. Let's say there's some traffic issues outside the
Mm,
stadium, so games are starting late. There's sometimes certain emergencies that happen within the crowd, which affects stoppages. Again, rightly so. And there's many another reasons why certain times the game stops for large periods of time. I just think, although those are absolutely valid reasons to do it, I think to your point, to stop teams or at least give them more cause uh, for pause in terms of this type of skullduggery, having an in-play clock every time the ball's out.
mm.
You've seen some of the histrionics from
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
goalkeepers. They'll pick the ball up from the left, they'll go take the goal kick on the right hand side and vice versa.
Mm,
Certain times, even the home ball boys I've seen, although we have a multi-ball system, certain
mm,
home ball boys are a bit more quick when it comes to the home team taking a throw in, as opposed to, let's say, the away team. Certain times, you'll get the crowd that's got the ball. Let's say, I mean, we have a multi-ball system, but certain times the crowd gets the ball and they won't give the ball back, and you've got to fetch another ball from, let's say, 10 to 15 yards away. So that's taking some time. If the ball exits the field of play, the clock stops. It's as simple as that. So
yeah,
ultimately, you've got to adhere to a minimum amount of time. And if that means a regular 3 o'clock game on a Saturday, you finishes at 5:30 p.m., so be it.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I agree. I agree. I think it's something that needs to be addressed. There's a lot of conversations taking place. I think that's the 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 most viable solution uh to try and sort of deal with what's becoming something which is, for me, it's more of a concern. It's increasingly in concern. But that
And
topic we can sort of pick up again
Yeah,
at
but
another time.
just
Mm.
on that, you just sorry, so sorry. I just thought about the incident as well, and I think it James Justin at the end of the game with Pedro Neto when Neto was pulling him back. I think it was James Justin. I'll have to double check, or it might be Bogle. I'll need to double check. There was that incident near the end of the game, if you remember. Neto was pulling the player, pulling the player, pulling the
Yeah,
player, and then the other player's not swung an elbow by any stretch. He's actually just fending him off because he's having his jersey
yeah,
ripped off
yeah,
him.
yeah, yeah,
And then Pedro Neto goes down like a sack of spuds. Now, me and my son were watching the game, absolutely livid, because we was like, referee should have. I mean, he's booked both, which is a shocker, to be honest with you. I
yeah,
can't believe he's
yeah,
booked the Leeds player because he wasn't even a swing of an elbow. That's the
yeah,
thing.
yeah,
He was simply fending him off. Yet Pedro Neto's there on the pitch rolling around. And then as soon as he realized, okay, the game seems to
yeah,
kind of going to be going on, he got up, no
yeah.
issues whatsoever. And it's about things like that that we need to drill out of this game. Again, it's not a Chelsea thing. Play should
Mm.
stop. Pedro Neto shouldn't be rolling around the pitch on the 95th, 96th minute just thinking I'll kill some more time because clearly he was faking it, wasn't he? So
Yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah,
incidents like that that really gets fans going, I think, on that topic.
yeah. And just sort of final on that, because it reinforces it, because they've done that and it's worked. There's no reason why they won't try it again.
Correct.
But right, that's enough of sort of Leeds, the relegation battle, top of the table now again, Arsenal. A 1-0, classic Arsenal. So is it back on? Is it back on? Go on,
Is
give us
it
your thoughts.
back? Yeah, I mean, listen, it was an important Saturday night fixture, wasn't it? We watched Liverpool Palace, so my son's team won, and then obviously I sit down to watch the Newcastle game. And listen, there was a lot of kind of Mikel Arteta spoke about before the game. That's a new season, and I kind of understand where he's coming from because ultimately the two teams were joint on points, joint on goal difference. So you can't get much
Mm.
kind of fairer than that in terms of it's a 5 game shootout
Yeah,
ultimately. And I think what I would say is I think look Arsenal the way they played and what have you. I think some of it was the fact that obviously they picked up an injury with Havertz early on. Arsenal are not an offensively great team to watch, and I don't think they are going to be for the rest of the season. Now I think we may see a very different Arsenal team next season. Depending on how this season ends, I absolutely believe in that, and I think there is some merit to that argument. You can see clearly this is a team that ultimately wants it too much. Mikel Arteta spoke about it after the game that after 22 years, it's not going to be a path of roses and wonderful music, I think is the way he put it. And I can relate. I think this is just simply a very desperate team that's going for its first title in the longest time, and it's getting ugly. And I think that's just something you have to ultimately put up with when
Mm.
the results matter more than performances. There have been some variation of this, perhaps to a lesser degree, for more large parts of the season. Ayub, it's just now the stakes are very much high, where one mistake could blow everything up, Ayub. And ultimately, they've got the win. Did they deserve to win? I'm not sure, to be honest, because I think Newcastle could have just as well claimed that a draw would have been a fair result. I wouldn't have argued against it. It was a set piece, again, well worked set piece, to be fair, and the class of Eze that ultimately settled this. I guess if Eze was still on the pitch second half, Havertz didn't have to go off, maybe they would have found that chance to get a second or two as the game started to get a little bit stretched. Wonderful chance from Wissa. Should score. Let's be very clear. That's a glaring opportunity. Arsenal, for the most part, defended. I thought, well, Newcastle had a lot of firepower on the bench, which they brought on Elanga, Barnes, and what have you. But ultimately, it was a very ugly win. Nervous crowd, nervous atmosphere. My friend was part of it as well. He said to me he was very, very nervous. You saw the chance Gyökeres had at the end where he should have squared it. Obviously, he tried to square it, but that's for a professional footballer, those are meat and potatoes passes. I mean, you've got to make that work around the defender onto Saka and another player running through as well, who probably would have scored. And in a title race, Ayub, as tight as this, when you get a chance to score a goal or what is
Mm.
heavily weighted in your favour in terms of as an opening opportunity, you can't be giving up these. Early on in the season, you'd say, listen, you're probably not thinking about goal difference as much. Again, I said for the longest time, your goal difference will start to shape the thinking and approaches of both these teams. And now it's coming to the fore where there was so much talk about the Gyökeres chance that he should have laid on a plate for Saka. So look, ultimately, I'm a big believer the win was the most important thing. I don't think these are the games where I'm not saying that goal difference should be at the forefront of their mind. Now, if they beat Fulham at home, which I think is another tricky game, where you Fulham are
Mm. Yeah.
they won at home this season. They won at home. I watched them at Anfield the other uh, day as well. They're a good team. They're a vibrant team. They've got a lot about them. They've got some really good footballers. Wilson, Smith Rowe, the fullbacks really bomb on. They've got a really cultured outfit, I would argue, at Fulham. So I don't think it'll be an easy game whatsoever. But I think if they can win that, they've got Burnley and West Ham next. Now, West Ham are fighting for their lives, but Arsenal have got a very good record there. I think they've put 10 or 11 past them in the last couple of games there. And Burnley at home. So if you're going for goal difference, I
Mm.
mean, those are the games you're going to have to find some
Yeah.
goals. It's as simple as
Mm.
that. I mean, so I don't think these couple of games are the ones where goal difference should come to the fore. Now, many people still believe if Arsenal win their 5 games, they'll win the league. I'm not so sure about that. But I do think in one of these games, not only are they going to have to win, they're going to have to win handsomely. But look, ultimately, first game out of 5, it's a 1-0 win. Mirrors City's 1-0 win away at Burnley for their game in midweek last time. I just think ultimately this is a team that's just super desperate right now, Ayub, to just get over the line. I think there has to be some understanding of that. I don't think I saw a bit too much rhetoric. I thought, in my view, as opposed to Arsenal being quote unquote jammy or being quite an ugly team to watch, I think it is ugly, but I think there's reasons for that, and I think there's
Mm.
understandable reasons for that. I don't think you're going to be going for a title for the first time in 2 decades. Now, some might argue, well, Liverpool won it after the longest time, but remember, they built a really incredible record under Klopp. It was what, just before COVID hit or something like that. I think their first 27 games, they won 26. So the title was done, much to their credit.
Mm.
They came obviously agonizingly close the season before when they came point behind City, but also lifted the Champions League. So look, I just think it's job done. That's the first thing. Huge game Wednesday night, massive opportunity, in my opinion, to get to the Champions League final, which would be another step forward for this football club after last season. And I think in the end, given that they picked up a couple of injuries, you'll have to see what happens to Havertz and Eze. You can't complain about too much. That was a Newcastle, a tricky team. Yes, they've been struggling recently, Ayub, but they've got some firepower.
Yeah.
They've got goals in them. They had obviously Guimaraes back, Tonali in the middle. Gordon obviously was missing and Livramento, but ultimately a win is a win is a win. So no complaints. Got the win, got the clean sheet, and we've said for the longest time if Arsenal are going to win this league, most likely it's going to be off the back of what is a very stable defense for the most part. So yeah, job done. On to the next one.
Yeah. keeps the Premier League top of the table. Really, really interesting. That's all Arsenal can do in a sense. Just get the win. I think it just maybe in one of these games, if you get a two-goal lead, that's probably when you can sort of maybe take the handbrake off. If it's 1-0, it's always it's this far too much at stake. And that Burnley game, I was saying actually to somebody about the Man City Burnley that could be a defining game because they only won 1-0, albeit they had the lion's share of the play. They had lots of opportunities, but that could be a crucial game because I was expecting them to maybe win about sort of 3-0, 4-0 to at least improve their goal difference. You've got Burnley to play. That probably could be, especially if you get a 2-0 goal. So a 2-0, if you get a 2-0 lead, that's when you can just sort of say, right, let's try and go for 5 or 6 because it will be decided on goal difference. I've got a feeling that both teams are going to win their remaining games. So it is going to be on goal difference. So one of the teams has to decide. It's going to be an opportunity where they can go for the jugular. And it's which team's going to capitalize on that opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, it's not just about both teams winning their games. It could just be that both teams win all their games and draw one. It could happen. So where it still could come down to goal difference. I'm with you on the Burnley game. City really had a chance to put huge pressure on Arsenal. They're not a free-flowing outfit. You score a goal super early. I actually went to bed once I knew it was 1-0. I was going to anyway because it was quite late at night and it's a
Yeah.
midweek game. But I assume when I woke up, I thought it's got to be at least 3, maybe 4-0 because Burnley are not going to score. So for them to just win 1-0, and I think in the end, a win is the most important thing. But you're
Mm,
right, Pep smart cookie. He'll have seen that and thought,
mm,
given where Arsenal were mentally, that would have been a real emotional dagger, let's say, to put a couple of goals past Burnley. Now, Arsenal know City have got some tricky games. Away at Everton's not a gimme. Away at Bournemouth, I could actually argue away at Bournemouth, as Bournemouth are a very good team,
mm.
but they tend to play football at you, which means if
Yeah.
City play their stuff, should be a few goals in that game. So that could be a game where they think if we win, we could win well in terms of
Mm,
Bournemouth. They let you play for the
yeah.
most part because they like a game of football. So I think you're right. Ultimately, Arsenal will see it as uh, try to get a good result on Wednesday, Atletico Madrid, beat Fulham, whatever that takes at home. I don't think that's the kind of game you can think. I don't think Arsenal are good enough right now to think, well, we're going to put a few past Fulham. Absolutely not. A win, I'd take 1-0. Try and get to the Champions League final off the back of the second leg at the Emirates, Ayub. And that may well shape a lot of the kind of mental kind of approach and attitude and positivity that the squad would have. You can imagine what a final Champions League final berth would mean, Ayub,
Mm,
irrespective of who you might play Bayern and PSG, because you're going to play a top opposition in a Champions League final.
mm,
But you can imagine the kind of emotional boost that would give the troops and the players to think we've taken another huge step forward in the Champions League. And here we are in our own hands on the cusp of a potential Premier League title trophy. You can imagine the crowd, you can imagine the players, you can imagine the manager, another big sign of progress. So, yeah, I think these next critical games, Wednesday, Saturday, could really well shape Arsenal's approach in those final few games of the league. So, yeah, exciting times for the neutral, I would say.
yeah, certainly for the neutrals, not and not if you've got a vested interest. It's getting far too nerve-wracking. But it's what we love, isn't it? Ultimately, it's what we love. I mean, it sort of evokes emotions that perhaps other things can't. Right, and I think on that note, I think we should sort of say sort of goodbye to our viewers. So as always, it's a pleasure that you've joined us. Hopefully, on the next one, I'll be in a really good mood because obviously, if I'm in a good mood, some good things have happened at Leeds. All right, so stay safe, enjoy yourself, and we'll see you soon. Ta-ra for now.